Okay, thank you all for joining today for cmBuilder workshop session, right? So, our theme for today, as you can see over here, this guy's trying to hit me with a bat. Our theme for today is Happy Gilmore, right? So, go watch the two movies on Netflix. Really good, really entertaining. And I know nothing about golf, only that there's some sort of a bird somewhere over there, so that's my extension of knowledge for golf. So let's keep this party started. So our workshop for the today, I'm going to be focusing a lot on ideas for creating site safety plans. So I really invite everyone to participate on the chat and on the QA with your own questions or like situations that you would like to see illustrated in a site safety plan, like or things that are relevant for you, so I can try to kind of like replicate them here in real time, right? In terms of feature highlights, we're going to talk a little bit about Blender and Blosm review. I'm gonna try to do the steps over here like a little bit quick, just because there are like have been a lot of requests lately, ticket support requests about this process. So I just want to review a couple of things, and also, I'm going to show how to create showing staging using our resources in our library. And yeah, just like a little bit of some tips and tricks, so like mostly focusing on how to use ChatGPT to help you with your simulations. Okay, so housekeeping items. The recording will be available in 24 hours on YouTube. Please check our previous workshops over there. I've heard from a lot of customers this week that they are getting a lot of value from these sessions. This is where you come from like the standard training and become a power users by watching these sessions. So I really invite everyone to bring the rest of your team in here, share the links with them so they can also learn from it and become more experienced users in cmBuilder. Okay, and use the QA and chat for questions, and yeah, I'll try to answer them as we go. Okay, cool. So let's get this started. Safety plans in cmBuilder, right? So we have added a lot of resources in the library related to safety plans, and I've we keep we keep getting feedback from our customers on how to create safety plans and like what are the types of integrations that we have, how they can better show and identify hazard and risk areas, and what is that they can do to leverage cmBuilder to communicate better safety in the site. So I'm going to go through a couple of these items and show you where to find them in our library. Okay, so the next step over here, let's go first on the safety items checklist. This is not an exhaustive list, right? So of course, every project requires a specific type of approach for a safety plan, depending on like what is more important, depending on the staging of the project, the requirements, the local requirements that you have. So it's always good to coordinate this with your health and safety manager to make sure that you're not like considering things wrongly or like you're not missing anything. Okay, so I'm gonna put this on the side over here to keep my checklist, and I'll bring this back whenever I go to the next page. Okay, so you guys can take a quick look on this list and maybe screenshot this, and there are other lists over here that we're gonna go through. Okay, so first of them, site boundaries and access, right? So this is kind of like basic in cmBuilder, but is one of the main things and the first things that you're going to be doing on your plan, right? So let me just go and create a new scenario over here so we can show a little bit of this. So I'm gonna duplicate the scenario just so we can have a scenario where I can play around without affecting anything else. Golf 3. That's not how you spell golf. Golf 3. Okay, cool. So site safety, site fencing and hoarding, right? So you're gonna find in our library a lot of resources, a lot of fencing types of resources, right? So you can like the most of them would be over here inside the resources, all category logistics and facilities and fences, right? So these fences, they have different types, and you can start with one and then change this to another one. So I'm gonna quickly place this because it's quite basic, so we can start building our site safety plan together. Okay, so through my fence, then I'm gonna check with my team like what else that I need to place over here in terms of hoarding? Do I need to protect the sidewalk for overhead protection? Do I need to put some gantry hoarding over there? Like what else do I need to manage over here? For example, like what's happening with the access for this other area over here? Can I block this? If I can't, how can I safely manage access to the existing building while having my site isolated, right? So if you want to change anything related to the fencing, you can go over here and edit the sketch. So I'm gonna just adjust that part over there and put some points. Another thing that a lot of people ask me is like how to add new points to the line. You simply click on the line and then click on points over here, and then it will add a new point. Okay, so just let's go create this. And the next step over here will be to put in some controlled entry and exit points, right? So you can, in terms of controlled entry, we have here in gates, we have a bunch of different gates that you can use, also turnstiles, also pedestrian gates, and so on and so forth. So when you start the discussion with your team about like how you're gonna manage the pedestrian access compared to the vehicle access, you can explore these gates options over here to see like what can be done. And everything that I'm talking about today, if you need any resource that is not in our library that will help you with your safety plan, please put in a resource request over here so we can build that resource for you and put them in the library, okay? So also, in the resource request, you can ask us to adjust the limits of specific resources. So for example, if I put in a double sliding gate at this location here, this is a bad location, but I'll use it. So if I put this double sliding gate over here, and for some reason I want to adjust the shape of this gate, and I cannot make it like big enough, you can always ask our team to go and adjust these limits over here, and we will adapt them for you. Okay, so we will increase or decrease them based on your requests. So controlling entry, you will also find like in the site and safety personnel category. So the categories that we're going to be using the most over here will be logistics and facilities categories, and also the site safety and personnel. And in here, you're going to find like security. Security, you're going to find like security cameras, security houses for the entry points, or like a little booth over here that you can place, and then like keep on going with that, right? So turnstiles, gate security checkpoints, we are covering this right now. And let me just put in like one turnstile over here, okay? So fences, oh, not fences, gates. And I'll search for turnstile, and I get a bunch of different options, and I'm just gonna place one of them here, okay? So this is a very bad design. Probably the gate should be over here compared to the other side. I just want to create something different than what I usually create. Then the next steps on our safety checklist over here is traffic and equipment management. So vehicle routes, like showing where your cut trucks are coming in, forklifts and how they're going to be going over your site, cranes and so on, mobile cranes, pedestrian walkways and crossings, delivery laid out zones and equipment and exclusion zones, right? So routes and paths, we have a category here inside logistics and facilities that's called routes and paths, and then you can use these arrows to show like where your truck's coming in and so on. One thing that is very important at this stage is also to represent where is going to be your emergency routes, like exit in a case of an emergency, right? And one thing that I forgot to explain is that sometimes when you're doing your safety plan or in cmBuilder, it might be interesting for you to either create this in a duplicate scenario, so you can freely create your safety plan and adjust things and like move things around, annotate without having to worry about how this is going to look like in your main scenario. Or you can create a whole milestone that is dedicated just for this, right? So if I click, if I have my sequence over here with like, let's say site mobilization and whatnot, and I want to create a safety plan like a view that is just focused on the safety plan, I can create a new milestone and say that this is going to be my safety plan, right? And then within these two, I can like define, for example, okay, let me just readjust the dates over here. So my site safety plan, and within these two, I can define like right now I can create views and elements that will be only visible in this safety plan over here, right? So coming back to what I was showing about routes, let's say that I want to highlight what are the emergency routes. So I'm gonna go into my 2D view over here, and I can go into my resources and then go into routes, right? And then show, for example, that this is going to be my my fire truck route and things like that. So it's always good to also identify what these items are. So we're going to be using a lot of combination of like resources and the annotation tools. So if I go over here in label, I can just put in a quick label to say that this is going to be my my fire truck route, you know. And then identify this element over here. And if you want these elements to show only in one milestone, of course, you're going to put the start and the end date at the same milestone. So I want to show the begin and the end of this resource will show only at this milestone. So now if I go back, those objects are not there. And if I go past that milestone, those objects are also not there. Okay, so this is a very good way to contain all of these visuals for your site safety plan in one single view. So vehicle routes, just like I did right now, pedestrian walkways. So pedestrian walkways, we have a resource in our library, also inside of routes and paths, that is these pedestrian footprints. So you can just show like that your pedestrians will come from here and then go all the way here, and then they can like cross the view here and so on. And maybe you're going to block this area, this sidewalk um, for deliveries or something like that. So you can come in here and put in like your little barrier to show that like this area is blocked. So you can go into site safety and personnel. So see, I'm navigating through like different resource kind of like groups, right? So I can go into fall protection. There are other barriers here in traffic controls, right? So for example, let's say a connected traffic bollard. I can put this guy here to show that like my pedestrians cannot go through this view. And if I want to be super safe and related to this, it's always good to put like you shall not pass kind of like board over here. That's the only way the pedestrians will understand that they cannot go through that. Okay, Gandalf said so. So yeah, pedestrian walkways and crossings, right? So we have also in the library walkways for you to place on the side over here. So zebra, kind of like walkway and so on. So as you can see, the idea of like the site safety plan is understanding how the library works and what is available over there, so you can go and add these objects in the view. Sometimes you want to do something that is a little bit more schematic. So if I want to show that this whole area over here is going to be blocked, I can go into my zones and then do like a zone instead of a resource, right? So just to annotate this. But very soon I'm going to show a little tips and tricks related to placing zones on the view that will be quite interesting for us, okay? So we can use this zone and put like over here as well to show, or I can use the zone to like highlight that this whole lane is going to be my fire truck route, you know. So these annotation elements, again, we can always just go in and say that I want to see these objects at only at this milestone. So if I'm active in this milestone and I'm placing the objects, by default, that's going to be the first date that they're going to show up. But it's always important, if you want them to be visible only on here, to put the end dates to be at that milestone. Okay. So pedestrian walkways and crossings, we can cover that. Delivery and lay down zones, right? So from the picture over here, we can see clearly that there is like a hazard area indicated in this scenario. So this textured area. You only premium users have access to this, but you, of course, you can use your colors in Monads, but it's always good to create them and highlight them, identify them, sorry. So to identify these elements, you can use both the label that I use for the fire truck route or callouts as well. So if I put a callout over here, I can just go in and identify that this element over there is going to be my delivery area, for example, you know, and we can color this to fit that view. So again, this might look a little bit basic for like most of the experienced users over here, but I'm using the same tools that you guys already know, very focused on only on safety plans, right? So and showing you how you can contain them in one single view. That view can be either a milestone that you dedicated for it, like this one, or it can be a duplicate of your scenario as a whole after you do your logistics plan, so you can populate that with your safety elements, right? And then you can assign people to work on just on that scenario and so on and so forth. Delivery areas, so equipment exclusion zones, crane swings and dump areas. So I will show in a minute how I created like this crane swing view over here, but very focused on the 2D perspective. However, if you want to show this in a 3D perspective, you can also create your zones based on your crane locations. So if I go here at the mouse on which my crane is supposed to show, give me 1 minute. So tower crane, where are you? Here. So if I go into this milestone where my crane shows, and I'm going to my 2D view, I can always like go into this object, turn on the length envelope so I can see like the total coverage of that crane, and then I can create a zone or line or a massing that would represent the areas that I cannot fly, right? So again, there are a couple ways for you to do that. If you create a zone, you can start a zone. I like to start the zone on the top of a crane just because it's going to be above everything. And like as you see, the first point that I clicked was on top of the crane. And so if I go in the 3D view, you see that my grid line is being placed on top of the crane, right? So from here, I would draw the shape that is related to the areas that I cannot overhang, and what is the overlap between the areas that I cannot overhang and the envelope over there, right? So let's go outside of our kind of like view, and then close this in here, and then I can go and put in my arc, and in this case I'm going to use the 3-point arc, and I can connect like this to even to this side over here, and then like just go ahead and close the whole thing. And when I hit confirm, now I get a zone in there that is showing the areas that I cannot overhang. Of course, if you want to separate what is the top of buildings with what is um, the top of the buildings, and also what is the areas that overlap just the streets, so you can show that those are delivery dates and can be pickup zones. Of course, you can separate that, but I just created like a very complex shape over here, so you can see these are the areas that I won't fly, right? But if you need to adjust, you of course you can just go into your sketch and then edit this sketch over here. And when I look on my 3D view, that zone is showing over there on the top because I placed them on the top of the crane. But I'm gonna move this down, and I can just project this on the ground if I want to, or I can place it like a little bit closer to the envelope like this, and so on. Okay, this can be a massing as well, so it will be like an extrusion of a volume. It's up to you to define like what is best for you. Sometimes I've seen people using a vertical face, right? To say like this is like a no-go zone. So if you want to do something like that, you can also use in our library of resources, we have a vertical grid, right? So if I go to over here in vertical grid, there, if I type in vertical, that's this resource over here, vertical surface, where you can draw that shape. Just say, okay, like this area here is going to be a no-fly zone. So if I just do that, I can now take that shape that I created there. That's similar to a fencing, and I can adjust the shape here to go above and say that like this is a no-fly area, you know? So something like this. Okay. So you can have that option. There are several options for you to show these no-fly areas and so on. So like probably the vertical surface would be more useful if you're working close to like a train station, train tracks, or things like that. Okay. Okay, so equipment exclusion zones, that's what I just mentioned right now. Okay, I've seen some message coming over here on the chat. Okay, anything would be cool if you didn't need to draw, but instead toggle on and off for each crane. Anthony, are we referring to the fly zones? The thing is that the fly zones, we will like the no-fly zones. It will be very different depending on where you place your crane, right? So the software cannot identify the areas for you. What is a no-fly zone? You need to identify that. So the only way for you to illustrate that is by drawing the shape that will represent that no draw area. So that can be drawn on all four sides to mark no fly zone, right? That I'm not sure if I understand, but yes, you can just use any of the annotation elements that we have over here. But like for this use case of the no-fly zones will be either a zone or a line where you like indicate the area that you cannot fly, or you can use these vertical surface over here, or even a massing to do a whole volume of areas that you cannot go with your crane. Okay. Going next on our safety items checklist over here, excavations, trenches, and shafts. You're gonna identify in your view what are the areas that you're gonna need to isolate, right? So for your excavation, and again, we're gonna be using our resource library over here to indicate the elements that you're going to need at that stage. So if I go forward over here, we're going to see like that I put in like some fall protection on this. But if I create, for example, a trench, let's go over here and do a trench. And I will use a line over here to place the trench. Just as an example, a very simple one. You might need to use, for example, a what is the name of the thing? The trench shoring, the box. I forgot the name exactly. But if I go over here in excavation in shoring, you're gonna find like that we have this excavation bracing and some trench boxes over here that you can use, and then basically the idea here is okay, so this aluminum sided trench box, I can put them as a polyline, and I'll just draw a line over here that will be similar to that trench. And when I hit confirm, I'm drawing like a line quickly just so we can see first how the object behaves according to that line. So I can see that this is the face that is controlling that line. So now I'm going to go and snap this face over here. And it's important to have whenever you're snapping lines to the face of an excavation, to either to not snap exactly, but either inside or outside, because otherwise the software doesn't know what is supposed to be up and down. So you can move this inwards a little bit, and then it will adjust to be only on the ground, right? So from here, we can go in and then extend these lines to adjust this a little bit further and control what is going to be the location of those boxes. And then once I put the location of it correctly, I can go into the adjust function and then bring this over here to delineate that. Okay, so I just created my little shoring over there for excavation. And if I want to go in and then put more stuff over here, like safety protection for the surroundings, or like a fall protection is one, I could just draw those objects in there as well. Okay. So overhead hazards and power lines. So this is something that it's interesting, especially for people that do a lot of work on inside the cities, like big cities and whatnot. So you have to deal a lot with these power lines. I always suggest that you take a quick moment on the first milestone to enhance those initial conditions, like represent the elements that when you get to the site, what you're going to find over there that might be a problem for you in terms of like safety and also planning, right? So for example, in this site over here, I have these power lines. So like at some point, I'm going to need to check if like my trucks can go below this, if like this might be in the way of a mobile crane like rigging or something like that. So in the first milestone, I always suggest that you placing some of these elements of your surroundings, like overhead power lines. So these are elements on our library as well, and also trees, things like that that might be impacting your logistics plan. Okay, so confined spaces, hot works, high risk activity areas, you can identify all of that. Control measures like barriers, guardrails, bollards, right? So safety nets and scaffolds. So in here in the category for safety personnel, you have fall protection. There are like overhead catch netting, some debris netting over here. So there are a lot of options, objects that are good friend Cohen over here added to the library that are related to these debris control, right? So, and again, if there's anything that you want that is not in there, you can request to our team. There is a safety group as well over here that is more like for flagging line and like things that elements that you might need to represent where you're placing your dedicated evacuation platform and so on. Okay. So man basket, there are a couple options of man baskets over here and so on. Temporary works, shoring bracing, I showed a little bit of that already. And we have like signage as well. So there is a whole category here dedicated for signage. So you can click on this and you can go and explore the signage that we have. Sometimes you're not going to find exactly the signage that you want because this is very dependent on the location that you're working on. So you might want to use some generic resource, for example, in signage. If you placing like one of these transparent vertical logos or horizontal logos and whatnot, you can adjust the branding in that to put in like your own signage. For example, if I placing this object in here, is going to be just like, again, this is more for like the premium users. So if you want to create your own library of images, you can put like a lot of images on your branding library and then just assign them over here. Or if you want to have like an icon view of that element, so you can see that on the 2D that I'm going to show you in a minute, you can also add your custom icon over here. Okay. So a lot of customization, a lot of capabilities for you to adjust this. And of course, you're going to be doing like a lot of these this analysis with your health and safety manager to make sure that you cover everything. And the last on our checklist over here would be like emergency preparedness. So muster points, fire extinguishers, first aid stations, emergency vehicle access routes, like I mentioned before, washrooms, sanitation units, break area shelters, drinking stations, off safety boards and all of that. So if I go into this other scenario, you can see that I added a bunch of these elements here in the view. And like I can show, for example, what is the temporary staging that I'm doing at this level with some shelters, with some fire protection equipment over there, with my toilets, some kind of like fall protection over here, and so on and so forth, right? So having a 3D view to help you identify these issues and these elements is extremely important, right? So you won't be able to see most of these situations and scenarios if you're working on only on a 2D perspective, right? So from a 2D view, you probably won't even identify like what is the that this might be like a scaffolding and like, hey, what's going on with this scaffolding over here? Is there any problem that I need to deal with? So all of these elements are always good for you to create them in a 3D view and discuss this with your team. Okay, so all of these elements are in our library. You can explore a little bit that to create your plan. Okay, so what did I miss? What did I miss in here? Like anything that you guys can think of that are safety elements that I didn't show today, you can put on the chat, and I will just go back into it and explain a little bit more. Okay, so let's go to the next step of our safety plan. So how can we efficiently create a 2D safety plan, right, from that 3D perspective? So there are a couple of, I'm gonna give you a couple of like hints and tips over here on how to create like this 2D plan quickly. So again, I'm gonna put this on the side so I can look at the list, but you guys can take a screenshot out of this so you can remember later. Okay, so let's go over here on this site safety view clean is the milestone that I'm going to work right now, but I created already a prepared one over here where it has like a lot of these elements. And when I go in the 2D view, you can see that it's a very complete kind of like aspect of this scenario, right? So the first thing that I would suggest is that your safety plan, so you might want to have like an approach to create this in a 2D view, like a 2D approach, right? So to do that, we're gonna be drawing a lot. So to draw on top of things, you might want to create like what a support for it. So as you can see over here, I have like this shape on the surroundings that is a massing. So, and the reason why I have this massing created over here is because that every time that I want to place something, I want to place that object on top of everything else because I'm creating this as a 2D approach, right? So if I go into my clean view and I start placing, let's say, for example, if I start drawing a zone to annotate something in the view, and then I draw like a shape over here, that zone will not be on top of everything. So I'm gonna need to move it upwards to get it like so I'll be able to highlight what I want to highlight. So to make your life easier, what I suggest is to create a massing, and then we can go over here in buildings and create a massing, and I'm just gonna create like a big one. So create a big massing here that will act as our support for a sketch, for the sketch, right? So the massing, of course, when you create it, like it's gonna look a little bit weird, but then what you can do is to set the color to be transparent. So I'm gonna put it like a white transparency over here, and also I'm gonna just put like a very small story height. And once I confirm and bring this up, this will be kind of like my sketch support. So if I'm working on a 2D view to identify elements of the 2D view, now if I go into 2D, every time that I place in a sketch or like an element will be placed on top of that massing, right? So if I go here and I annotate and draw a line, and I just do any line, you might think that you're selecting the point on the ground, but as you can see over here, my plane offset is showing that like I'm drawing something really far up on the view. So my line is being placed over there. So when I create that line, it actually works as a kind of like sketching support over there on the top. And if I look on 3D, obviously it's gonna look a little bit weird, but like if you go into 2D, you get your line drawn over there on top of everything else. Okay, so this creating of a massing over there on the top is going to help you a lot with like creating elements faster because you don't need to keep moving everything up to have them above the elements. And also, of course, you're going to need to deactivate the project on terrain because otherwise it will disregard like the elevation of the massing, and then we'll place the line on top of the terrain. So as you can see, the line is going below a bunch of the elements. Okay, so this is a very, very interesting tip to help you work efficiently. Okay, so another thing is that when you create that massing, if you keep in your graphics, if you keep the ground shadow turned on, like it will cast a shadow on your site. So if I turn this on, like whatever area that is below the massing is going to be darker. So we want to work with this turned off just because like we want to make sure that this, whoops, looks like my graphics card over here is taking a little bit of a hit. So as you can see, if I turn this on, this whole area is darker because the ground shadows are turned on, right? So if I turn this off, like it will deactivate that ground shadow. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why it's also interesting to duplicate the scenario so you can work with dedicated kind of like settings of your display that won't affect the main scenario, for example, right? So this will affect all the milestones. So you can choose if you want to work with a separated milestone or a separated scenario. Okay. 2D view icons. So every time that you place a resource in the library, you have the option to have a 2D icon view, right? So I've already explained this in a previous session, but basically the icon view is just what you define to be the visual like reference for that object when you go when you activate the icon view. So right now I'm on 3D, and the icon view is turned off by default. But if I click on this button, this object here will be replaced by my icon. By default, when I activate a 2D view, the object itself already is replaced by the icon, right? So I really suggest that whenever you place objects in your view, deactivate your icon view. It's not going to be activated by default. So activate this, because if you activate, we don't put this on by default because it might overcrowd your 2D view. So you need to define which objects you want to highlight on the 2D view and which ones you don't want to. So like for example, these elements over here that I placed, when I go into 2D, you see how like my gates and the turnstiles are showing over here, but my fence line is not. So if I go into the fence and I activate the 2D icon view, I can turn this on, select what is the parameters of that line. And now when I go in the 2D, it will be replaced by this line over here. So it starts to look more like a drawing. Okay. The other tip that I have for this effort here for the safety view is for you to create a default camera angle or define your project north, because every time that you're going to start working in your sketch, you're going to, if you're doing like a bunch of these elements on top of your massing, you're going to be drawing a lot, right? So to make your drawing actions more efficient, it's easier if you go into your project and you define a project north, right? I already explained this in our last workshop, so I won't dwell too much on this, but you just need to go over here in the coordinate system and create a coordinate with a rotation for your scenario. So like if I go over here and set this one as active, I know that the angle to my true north will be a little bit different. So this means that now whenever I open a scenario, so let's say this one over here, my sketch will be oriented with that angle. So it will be way easier for me to add elements over here in the view and so on and so forth. And not just that, I also suggest that you create a presentation slide with an angle, like a camera angle, that will be your go-to whenever you want to do this work, right? So I can go over here in my site safety view clean and say, okay, every time that I want to work on safety, I want to activate this camera angle, because I want to look at this like with this frame. So instead of like me having to go in the 2D view and then rotate and position everything again, I can simply click now on this saved view, and my view is snapped to that, and then I can go back and start doing my work, right? So having this kind of like saved view will help you a lot by aligning everything while you're doing the drawing, right? Another point that I really stress on this is to really use the annotations. So callouts, lines, and zones, like I did over here, right? So I created a line to represent the crane radius. I put a lot of callouts to highlight elements in this view. I created a zone over here for the no-fly zone and so on and so forth. And whatnot. But also, one interesting thing is that you might want to refer to other documents, right? So let me just adjust one thing over here. This mess because I created a second massing. So I'm gonna put this massing to end at this milestone. So when I go to the next one, it won't block the view of the other elements. There you go. So when I create like these callouts, I might want to add more information to them, but you don't need to overcomplicate things. You can simply say, for example, if I want my viewer to be able to click on this callout and go to the spec sheet of this manufacturer, I can simply add a clickable link to the callout, and then you can point to drawings, you can point to spec sheets, you can point to reports, or anything that will help your team kind of like understand your safety plan. Right. And the last thing about this is the comment feature. So it's very important for you to use the comment feature so you can collaborate quickly with your superintendents, with your health and safety manager. So you can create a comment here and just like say, for example, no fly zone. Okay, so I can tag someone. I'm gonna tag Nikon here and say, have we coordinated this with the neighbor? right? So Nikon in the role of a safety manager will get an email, and then he can come in here and then answer this or resolve or anything like that. So using the comment feature to have that collaboration is crucial for you to work a little bit more efficiently. Okay. So yeah, and then additional use cases to explore. So one additional use case would be like 3D planning for fall hazards, right? I already talked about this a little bit. So it's hard for you to identify these issues and these kind of like complex risk areas if you're working on a 2D perspective, like just like PDF creators and whatnot. So creating a 3D plan, it's going to give you a lot more context. And one interesting thing that I've seen a couple of customers already doing this is creating an instructional onboarding video in cmBuilder. So once you've done all your safety plan and you created like all the milestones and like put the elements that you want to highlight in here, you can go ahead and go in and say, for example, that define that you want to create a video. So this milestone over here, I created a dedicated milestone for this. I can call this milestone like onboarding video, So onboarding video that will be able to, like, I can create my camera angles that will point at specific locations with call outs and so on. So you can help like the team identify that and like represent the emergency routes and things like that. Things that will be shown to every new hire that will come into your site instead of like showing a video that's like that was made in the 70s, super outdated, that has nothing related to your construction site. You can actually create a customized video to communicate this better with your team and have that video playing on a TV or anything like that, doing the work, so people will be able to identify these elements a little bit better, right? So if I go here and play for this current slide, we will see the step by step of like what this video would look like, right? So showing like a new hire, all of these elements would be really helpful for them to understand better like how to behave on the emergency situation, for example. Okay. So interior work scenarios, right? So you can have like, for example, also these I was very focused right now on external work, but you can also use these elements, everything that I just showed, you can apply them to the interior work as well, and like highlight situations where like something might get complex, right? And feedback for the future, right? So let's say, for example, that you're working on this scenario and something happens on your site, some situation happens, and you want to make sure that you collect that knowledge and that lessons learned for the next sites and simulations. You can always use the comment feature as a way for you to highlight what is important for people to learn in the next steps, right? So you can say, for example, over here, let's consider traffic impact on the next deliveries. The crane that was using was quite slow. Let's coordinate this better with the formwork trade and so on and so forth. So whenever you learn a lesson, come in here, put a comment on your site safety plan, or even like in your other simulations, just to make sure that you collect that information to bring it over to the next simulations or your next projects. Okay, cool. So this was a very dedicated part of the workshop just for the safety plans. And again, if there's anyone that would like to ask more questions about this, or please share this part of the workshop with your health safety mission managers. Okay, so I'm looking at the time over here, so we only have 15 minutes left. I will skip the Blosm review, and if I have time, I will bring back to this. But one thing that I want to highlight is that there has been a recent increase on support tickets related to the Blosm import. I just want to remember everyone that we are working on right now in the direct Google Maps integration, so you won't need to go through Blender to like create your surroundings before you bring to bring it to cmBuilder, right? So this is going to be done automatically inside the platform. It's a very challenging tool that we have been working on. So like we're still in the final touches phase, and we're going to be releasing like to some beta testers first, and then we're going to collect some feedback and then apply to it and then improve a little bit better. So but meanwhile, you're gonna still use like Blosm for this. So one thing that I would like to suggest everyone to do is to update versions. Like if you have any trouble with Blender and Blosm and Material Combiner, always try to work with the latest versions of these three elements. Okay, so if you install Blender from the Microsoft Store directly from the like your Windows Microsoft Store, Blender will be automatically updated. So every time there is a new version, it updates automatically. You might need to update Blosm and Material Combiner separately, but that's a good tip to have like your Blender version always updated. Okay. And one other thing is that I would suggest for you to do the split in cmBuilder. So this is something that I started doing like recently. Before, we would suggest that you create the opening for your model in Blender before you bring that to cmBuilder. But now with the new version of the split tool, you can bring this whole model in here and then create the split inside cmBuilder. And then I'll show later how to adjust the terrain accordingly. But one thing that is interesting and also super important is to keep checking the user guide for the other map improvements that we have, like for example, adjusting your terrain, bringing in new satellite images, bringing in the like drone scans and things like that. Okay. Mm, I said that I was going to skip this and I ended up like talking a lot about it, but I'll go in more detail in the next workshop. Yeah, so creating shoring stages, right? So this is something that I haven't seen people doing a lot, but it's especially because like if you're working on a pursuit stage, you're probably not gonna be doing the shoring stages. But depending on the level of detail that you want to create in your simulation, you might want to show shoring for your form work and things like that. So it's important to define what is the accuracy level that you need from that shoring simulation. Do you need to place all the towers in the correct locations, or you just need to show the viewer that shoring is there, right? So because of that, what I would suggest is for us to create template lines. I'm going to show you in a minute how to do that. You will define the spacing between the towers. You can set them to be dynamic, so you can move them up and down as you move forward with your concrete cycles. And also you can create your shoring and reshoring stages, right? So in a situation like this, over here, let's go back one step. So what are you seeing here on the screen? I created it with a combination of like creating templates with lines and projection of that schedule on top of everything else, right? So, oh, sorry, the sketch. So let's go and delete these elements so I can create them from scratch. So basically, I will delete these lines as well. So what I mentioned about like you defining the level of detail that you want from this, like the level of accuracy, sorry, is that like if you want to place each tower separately, of course, you can always go over here in the resource library, go into logistics and facilities, scaffolding platforms. The shoring towers will be over here. Like there are a couple of different types that you can choose, but if I want to place each tower separately, I will go into the shoring tower scaffolding, and I will see a little bit of a preview of how that shoring tower looks like. And then I can go in and then rotate them and then place one, and then I will adjust that shoring tower to what I need, like the height that I need. And then from that point onwards, on the size, right? So if you can choose like adjust the size, then you on the point where you can go and copy paste and then place this element in different locations, right? So just place it over there and so on. There's a little bit of like something that we're fixing right now. So I would also suggest that you define these parameters should be constant, because the copy paste right now is not bringing in the dynamic parameters over. So you should set them to constant first, but we're going to fix that. But this is going to take some time for you to place each one of these elements like separately, right? So what I would suggest is to create like a scheme, kind of like a draft of like what do you where your shoring towers will be, and I can create that like by creating lines, right? So you can put all the lines in one sketch, or you can do them individually. I prefer to put them in one sketch because it's easier to simply go over here in the offset, keep original line, and then you bring this offset over here, and then this offset over here again, you know, and then you can hit O on your keyboard to as a as a shortcut for this, right? So let me adjust that part, and there you go. So I just created the template of where the shoring towers are going to be, and then from here I can go into my resource, create a shoring tower, and then create a polyline, right? So I'm going to place this polyline over here, and then I will project the shape of my 3D sketch. But for the resources, you cannot have individual lines like this. They all need to be connected. So it's up to you. If you want to create just the individual lines, you can go here and then delete the ones that you don't want. Like let's say these guys, right? These guys. And then when you hit confirm, now that shoring tower will show over there, and then you can go in and adjust the shape like I did for the individual object, set up the spacing over here, and then there you go. You have your shoring tower over there. So you can copy paste this element to the side, right? So when I hit do a Control C, Control V over here, it's gonna take some time for the preview to show up in my view, but the copy paste will show up wherever my mouse is. So if I don't really care about the accuracy and I just want to show where they are, I don't need to create these templates. I can simply create a line and then copy paste and bring them over. But if I really want to place them on a that defined spot, I will place this new object in here, and then I will go into the sketch, redraw, project the template of the lines, and then delete the ones that I don't want. Okay, so it's just a way for you to say, okay, I want the same object to be placed on the other side. Okay, so quick tips for you to create this, and for you to do if you go onto the next, I won't do the rest, right? Just save some time here. So if I go into the next milestone and I want to move these elements up, let's say at this stage over here, this slab is transparent, so I could take this screenshot before. So I can just like make this showing over here. Oh my God, I'm making a couple of mistakes over here to do fast, guys. Sorry about that. But let's say that on the next milestone, let's say like 3-4 cycles from now, I want to move this up. I can go in and set up this sketch, this object to be dynamic, the position to be dynamic. So that way I can move it to another like floor in a specific milestone. So now if I go back, that object is down here, and if I go forward, that object is over here, right? I didn't do for all the slabs because it would take some time, but you guys understand the idea, right? You can create your scheme of shoring for one level and keep moving it up as you need them. Okay. And just so we can conclude this with a couple of tips and tricks, I would like to suggest that you guys try to use ChatGPT right now for 2 different use cases that I've been using. One is to create the schedules, right? So if you're in the pursuit stage and you want to create something like your milestone list super quick, I can go in here and say, for example, I didn't create any milestones in this scenario. So I'm going to go and open my schedule, and I'm going to download a schedule CSV, right? So the CSV will show up over here. Then I can go into ChatGPT, our big buddy here, and say, like, in a prompt, I suggest I'm using this prompt over here, like populate this CSV file with 10 main construction stages, focusing on critical path items to be presented or pursued, blah, 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 blah. Suggest dates based on average durations, right? So if you put this prompt or like something similar to that in here, and then you go and drop your CSV, like this, the ChatGPT will go in and then just go and create this, populate the CSV with the dates that in the stages that you want, right? So let's see what's going to be the result. Mm-hmm. ChatGPT 5 is slower for me. I don't know if it's the same for everyone, but I found it like way slower than before. But as you can see over here, you can see that it just populated the rest like of this. Of course, you will describe on your prompt whatever you prefer, but this is just a way for you to quickly create the CSV file. Now you can download the file and bring it over to cmBuilder and import that same file. Where was it? Over here. So if I import the schedule and I bring this new file in here, I have those dates that ChatGPT created with my start and end dates, and then I can select what I need. Okay. So this is a quick way for you to do that. You could ask it to add like 10 levels of structure, 10 levels of building envelope, whatever you prefer, like just describe it on that so you will create all the milestones for you automatically, right? In another use case that I've been doing this a lot is that a lot of times you guys will be working with geolocated models, but 95% of these times, at least the ones that I talk to, you are giving the model, but you're not giving a lot of instructions or information about how that model was created in the geolocation space, right? So um, for us in cmBuilder, for us to locate your model properly, we need to know what is the coordinate system that you're using. It might be identified in some documents, or you might have contact with your survey team, and they might be able to tell you what exactly is the coordinate system that you're using. But in the case that you don't have that information and you need to geolocate your model, I've been using this prompt and it's been working very well for me. So like I put in ChatGPT, what is the most probable coordinate system in EPSG code for a construction project at this Latin long, right? So I'm going to take this prompt over here, and let's say that I'm working on this scenario, right? This area. I don't know what is the coordinate system that people use for this area. So I'm going to go into ChatGPT, put that prompt in, and I will go back over here in my project and get this lat and long, So when you copy paste this and put it over here, like ChatGPT will try to probably will find like what is the most used EPSG code on that area, from on construction professionals, right? So it will give us a little bit of this and the EPSG code. This is what we need, right? So it might give you a couple of options, right? So depending on the options, you might choose which one you're going to be using. So from that point onwards, let's say over here it says the most probable choice for the construction project in Vancouver is this one. So I can go and copy this EPSG code, go back in my project, go into coordinate system, and I'm gonna add a new geo coordinate system. You put that EPSG code over here. It's gonna show you which one is it. You add it, and then now, once you add this new EPSG code in here, you can go and say that you're gonna use this one to geolocate. So it might be probable that like this. Oh, did I choose the correct one? I think so, yeah. So the possibility for you to geolocate your model accordingly and correctly, it's going to be way better now because you're working with the correct or like the most probable EPSU code for that area, right? So this is very important for people that work with geolocation and they're expecting the model to show up in the right spot, but they don't know yet the coordinate system. So you can identify using ChatGPT. Okay, so that's it. Oh, we are in the break of the hour over here, so let's just recap a little very quickly what we covered today. I spent a lot of time talking about safety plans and a little bit of the Blosm review, how to create shoring stages, and how to get help from ChatGPT for creating the schedules and identifying your coordinate system. Okay? Okay, let's kill this. See you guys. Have a nice one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.